Hey Kate, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So maybe to begin, could you just tell us a little bit about the film and how you came across the story and why you decided to make the film?
Sure. So I think in general, I was really interested in fake news. It was around the time of the 2016 election, 2017, and I was kind of looking for a way into that subject. And I came across an article in Wired magazine that talked about, what was happening in Velez, and there were also some amazing photographs of the town. And I just became really intrigued by this idea of teenagers pumping out this, bizarre political clickbait that affects people in a that affects us thousands of miles away. So I think I thought from the get-go, I was interested in, okay, this is happening in Macedonia, but really this is a story about the US or the UK or wherever these stories are kind of taking aim at. And I think more generally, I was also interested in the idea of making a film that explored like fakeness in general and the idea of what makes stories believable. It's a theme that is very intrinsic to filmmaking. What makes a good story? Why do we want to believe these things? So I was kind of playing with all these questions, and then this felt like a way into it. So I think I knew that I was going to take a kind of creative approach, even if I didn't know exactly what that was, and this felt like a great playground for that.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting you should say that, even in documentary there is this whole idea, this, what's real and what's fake, what's being constructed and what's natural. It's an interesting topic and, quite relevant to documentary as well. So fake news in your film, you've kind of used a blend of real and acting, or performative and real. Fake news is also a little bit like that. It kind of blends fact and fiction. What made you approach your film in making it that way, blending fact and fiction?
Well, I mean, when I watch the film back, and I hope this is the case for other people watching it, it's not even. I think it's not even entirely clear what is the fact and what is the fiction. And I think that really does get at the heart of my intention for the film. If you look at the real archive that I used in the film, there are clips of Trump echoing fake news in political speeches. So I think that using those things alongside each other hopefully asks people to think deeply about the way that these fake things that kind of can seem frivolous are really permeating our very real world. So I hope that is something that comes across. I mean, I think on a kind of practical level, at the time that I was filming, Velez had gotten a lot of attention for the teenagers who've been writing the fake news. And a lot of them didn't want to be filmed. A lot of them didn't want to take place. And I think also thinking about it, like the film wasn't really about them. I mean, they were just trying to make money. So in a way, I saw them as pawns in this larger ecosystem. So I was always trying to ask myself, okay, how can I make a film that shows their role, but also tells us that this is really bigger than them and doesn't vilify them. I think I also felt like that was quite important, to not point the finger, because it's very easy to do that, but actually there are a lot of complexities around fake news that are sometimes lost. There's the consumption of it, there's the kind of corporate structure that enables it and incentivizes it. So I wanted to kind of hint at those things as well.
And did you have a sense of kind of compassion for these young people in this city who were just trying to make an income from doing this? And perhaps as well, is there a general sense in Velez that these people were doing it not out of a global conspiracy to influence politics on the other side of the world, but rather something that they were doing to kind of earn a little bit of money, earn a little bit of income?
Yeah, I mean, the impression I got from the people I met was it was people who were just trying to earn a little bit of money. There were some people who'd been very successful at it, although that's a minority. And I think with with those people, there's more of a formal structure, and there was kind of rumors around what that was, and I didn't really explore that. It was actually very hard to explore that, but the people I met were kind of people who dabbled in it, young people who'd heard that this was a way to make some money. And yeah, so I think, you know, I think they felt really divorced from the implications of writing something fake and putting it on the internet. And frankly, that's something that lots of teenagers do. So I didn't want to sensationalize the act of doing it.
Yeah, it's also interesting that you should say about the, you know, the multiple aspects of fake news, and the kind of machine that operates, you know, through tech companies, through platforms like Facebook, individual websites, and that kind of thing. Where do you think the buck stops with accountability for this? Is it with the people that post it? Is it with the platforms that host it? Or is it with the politicians who promote it? Or is it with the audience who consume it?
I mean, that's a really big question, and it's a really good question. I think in the film I was interested in asking that question. I don't have a straightforward answer to it, but I think that it's probably all of the above. I think that the reality is we live in an ecosystem where those are the structures that are defining our political discourse, and we're still seeing that. You know, in the US there's about to be another election, and it's, yeah, I think to unpack it, I mean, there are lots of people who do lots of amazing work, lots of journalists, academics, unpacking those structures. I think that we need to, I guess all I'll say is we need to think really, really critically about the structures that we're embedded in, because it's affecting our democracy. And I think that yeah, there's a lot of like really thoughtful commentary around that. Like Carol Cadwallader has done lots of really robust journalism around that. I mean, Fake News Fairytale is a playful film that is asking those questions, but I think you're right that for me, definitely it goes beyond those individuals who are writing it.
And I found myself at those moments where you feature the footage of Trump, you know, especially the comment that he made that Obama was the founder of ISIS, which is so, you know, hysterical and inflammatory. I did actually find myself at times thinking, did he really say that? You know, has this been, you know, altered in some way? Were you conscious about using that kind of footage and, you know, I guess not promoting the idea of fake news, but certainly illustrating it in a very, you know, visceral, you know, upfront kind of way?
I think I had the same experience when I was going and I was looking for what archive or what real news clips were out there. I think I was also surprised by some of the stuff he'd said. And I think that speaks to how desensitized we've all come to those remarks and just how damaging they are. I mean, the fact that those words actually came out of his mouth is really quite shocking. But then, you know, I think another commentary I wanted to make in the film was like, what is it about these kind of glib, short statements that pulls people in and that has lots of appeal? And I think that was also why I was excited by the fairy tale as a structure for the film, because fairy tales are these kind of simple morality tales that then get consumed and passed on and are kind of easy to digest. And again, I think that unfortunately these political demagogues like Trump are then very digestible in this kind of short attention span internet ecosystem. So there are lots of layers at which it's problematic and concerning.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, people take the bait. You know, they respond to what they want to hear. You know, and it's a yeah, very, very confronting comment from him. I agree, and I was certainly shocked by it. I kind of couldn't believe it. But throughout the film, you did kind of try to, I guess, sway through the kind of you know, the multiple meanings of things, if you were, throughout the film. There's definitions that are put forward for kind of key concepts that actually break up the film into kind of chapters: fairy tale, real, fact, fiction, and truth. Why did you want to explore the definitions of those words? And sometimes those definitions are confusing and actually in some ways contradictory. But yeah, could you talk a little bit about why you decided to include those words as concepts in the film?
Yeah, I mean, I think initially it helped me structure how I was looking at the film conceptually, and then I think I did play with the idea of, okay, what does it mean to remove them, and what does it mean to keep them? And I think I kept them because it felt like another layer that, you know, asked the audience to think about the concept of what is real, about the concept of what is truth, what is fiction. And you know, in the context of a film which is maybe part fictional, part documentary, it is a little bit of a kind of tongue-in-cheek thing there. As you say, some of the definitions are contradictory based depending on where they appear contextually. So I think I was intrigued by these dictionary definitions and how slippery they were, and just felt like that was a fun and exciting thing to add into the film.
Right. And so you've explored this kind of fairy tale theme, but both thematically and stylistically. It's a kind of it was a reminder to me throughout the film that you know, it is, you know, sometimes fact can really be stranger than fiction. But why was it important to represent the story using these fairy tale elements? What were you hoping that it would achieve as a result to the audience? Especially probably the soundtrack, I think, was probably the most striking you know, fairy tale element to me.
Yeah, I think it really started with the idea of what makes a story stick, what makes a story believable. You know, I was really interested in this question of when, okay, you've got a teenager in Macedonia who's writing an article and posting it on the internet, but then there's somebody who is reading it and believing it and sharing it. And I think that just got me thinking about, and also I think when I was filming, when I would talk about what I wanted to do with the film, a lot of the response I got in Velez was, well, you know, people here are writing this fake news, but it's not our fault. It's the people who are reading it and believing it. And so I think I really was focused on that question. And I think fairy tales, they're fake stories, you know, and they're kind of old fake stories that we believe and that we like to believe and that we share. And so I thought that adopting that as a structure for the film could make it in itself this kind of like catchy morality tale. And also there was a lot about the story itself, which was kind of, you know, there's the villain. Trump is kind of like an archetypal villain with some of the things that he says, and then there is a clear learning that the protagonist has. And that was really the way that, I mean, his story is a true story, it's a real story, and that's a real individual. So I think that it was such a simple kind of almost cliche of a narrative that I thought fairy tale could be a fun and appropriate medium for it.
Well, I love the title, Fake News Fairytale. It's such a great title for a film. So lastly, so what are you working on now? Have you been working on projects over the last few months? Do you have much coming out soon, or?
Yeah, I've been working on a featured documentary, which is also about the internet age in a sense. It's about an activist who is stopped, questioned, and eventually prosecuted as a terrorist for refusing to hand over the passwords to his phone and laptop at Heathrow Airport. So I've been working on that, and that film also involves a reconstruction element, which is kind of what I've got my head deep into right now. So it's exciting again to be looking at, how to tell a story that is set in this digital world and feels very much of that world, but also uses a creative device to visualize it. So it's another big challenge, but that's what I'm kind of working on right this minute.
Great. Yeah, that sounds exciting. Well, thanks for your time today, Kate. And we look forward to seeing your new film.
Oh, great. Thanks so much for having me.